We'll be focusing on the reading from Romans for today, which begins, I appeal to you, therefore, my brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice. What does that mean? What do people think of this phrase? What does a living sacrifice look like? In most cases, sacrificing something would mean not having it anymore. But you can't really do that with yourself, can you? Most common meanings of the word sacrifice are about giving something up. The original Latin roots for this word, though, are really interesting. For the word sacrifice, those Latin words are the words for sacred and to make. So, to make sacred. So, could this be a sort of sanctification concept? The idea that the Holy Spirit is continually at work in us to guide us toward a better and better self, a more whole and holy way of living centered on God. There would probably be things that fell away if we really did that. So maybe the common definition works as well, but just in a slightly different way. Rather than a giving up, maybe there's something that changes as we are present and show up for that time with God. So it's less like a giving up and more like a letting go of other things, of distractions and worldly cares and concerns. And that would certainly flow into the next verse. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. I know I've seen a cross-stitch pattern for that somewhere. But I've also been really challenged by this verse to think about that a little bit more. Because do not be conformed to this world. Well, what is this world? What are the things in this world we're pressured to conform to? We've talked before in sermons and conversations about status quo and the unspoken but understood rules of power in society. How, if you're standing in a group, there's a little bit of an understanding about who is or should be listening and who should be listened to. How there are some accepted practices and attitudes that we're simply supposed to go along with, even if we think they should change. And how we ourselves might even push back when we're challenged, with a one line, well, that's just the way it is, or, that's life. So, yeah, we do probably have an idea of what these, conforming pressures of the world are. But do not be conformed to this world, okay? So we have a what not to do. And we have what to do as well. That's something that's very interesting to me. Paul isn't just writing, don't be like that, or we disagree with them, or we're not that. Paul writes in positive terms too. What to do. Be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Go and find new perspectives and stories. Come back and talk about them. Find art and music and unexpected places the Holy Spirit might be at work in the world and the people around you. And allow it to transform you. Renew your mind. That's really powerful. And then we get to why. So that you may discern what is the will of God. what is good and acceptable and perfect, so that you may discern, to think deeply and figure out or find a path or a step toward the will of God. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, maybe. Yeah. And what is good and acceptable and perfect? Well, that takes some discernment to figure out. And how might we participate in that? God's will and work and direction? Again, yeah, that's going to take some discernment. Perhaps the starting point is with our gifts. This brings us to our final verses from the passage for today. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us: prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness. Now, I don't know if you'll have noticed this, but one thing that really stands out to me in these last few verses is that not everyone is the same. And no one is the whole body either. Connecting to something from those earlier verses, do not be conformed to this world. What is this world telling us? Now, this may not be true for everyone. It may not be a universal thing, but I think sometimes the world can tell us that we have to do it all and be everything. There can be a certain pressure sometimes to have it all figured out and be self-sufficient, and that pressure kind of leaks out, and we start expecting everyone else to do that and to have that as well, to have it all together all the time and never need or expect that something could get done unless you do it yourself. And then once you have all that done, you can and should do even more because you suddenly have the time, don't you? Another conversation I've had is about this feeling that if you're not exhausted, almost burning out, doing as much as possible and then some, then you're not even doing enough. You know, this can be in the context of your job, but it can also, have, pieces in there of friends and family or even personal goals. Are you doing enough to get to where you want to be? Some might call it climbing the ladder, taking advantage of every moment, success. But that's also something that's not real or realistic. We can't be prophet and minister and teacher and exhorter and giver and leader, as well as the embodiment of compassion and cheerfulness. We can't be all that. And we don't have to be. Because we have gifts that differ. They do. You have a gift. So don't do everything. Do your thing. The teacher might not always have the gift of cheerfulness, and cheerfulness isn't always helpful in more serious moments of ministering. We need both. We need all of those things. But at different times, and sometimes from different people, different members of the community, to kind of fill in that picture and make that community complete and balanced. And I think, if we sit with that for a while, with that message and that idea, and work toward realizing that, I think we have a chance at finding a best, or at least a better, way of living. A way that each person can do what they excel at and can show up to do that. And someone else takes care of the thing they're best at, and someone else takes care of the thing they're best at. And together the pieces fall into place, and suddenly we're all able to do more and are happier about it and more energized by it because it's what we wanted to do in the first place. So what's your gift? What's the thing you love to do or can't help but frame the way you think about the world in that way? Think about that this week.